guys, it's Alice, and today it is time to tell you about the books I read in the last part of August. It starts off a little rough today, but it gets better, I promise. The first book that I read was The Woman in the Dunes by Kobo Abe. This is a modern classic. It's translated from Japanese by E. Dale Saunders, and the story is about an entomologist who goes into the desert looking for bugs, and he ends up being trapped by locals in this sand pit where a woman is already living. So this is one of those books that I've had for quite some time, and I'd sort of been saving it for a rainy day, like one of those days where I just wanted to pick up something I knew I was going to like, because I really did think that this was going to be exactly my cup of tea, and it just kind of wasn't. I like the concept of the story and what it represents, and I like the visual of these people stuck at the bottom of a sand pit, and they have to shuffle sand every day so that it doesn't overcome them. The sand and the desert is always there, and you're constantly reminded of it, so it feels almost oppressive and like you're kind of choking on sand all the time. Sadly though, I found the main character in this to be absolutely insufferable, and not in a good way at all. And I really didn't like the way that he related to the female character, like it really bothered me. I also felt like she wasn't really painted as an actual person, and she wasn't really that well developed. She was just kind of there for him. So overall, besides the atmosphere and the setting, I didn't really like this, and I don't really think I would recommend it. And I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. I'm usually kind of into bizarre books, but this just is not it. Secondly, I read Golden Hill by Frances Spufford. This is a historical fiction novel, and it's set in Manhattan in 1746, where a man steps off a boat and no one really knows what to make of him, and this charming and intriguing man seems determined to keep himself and his business in the city shrouded in mystery. I was really excited about this book, but I sadly ended up not really enjoying it all that much. The story in and of itself is not uninteresting. Like, we've got a vibrant setting, we've got a mysterious protagonist, and the society that he roams around is filled with interesting characters. But what I didn't get on with was the writing. I think it's pretty clear that the author has done a lot of research on this time period, and he wants to get it right, and he does so to such an extent that it just kind of gets in the way. Like, I would read a bit and I'd be like, okay, cool, I'm interested, and then we would just go into this rut of stuff, and it just really didn't work. I actually struggled so much with this that I ended up skimming the last 150 pages because I just couldn't force myself to actually read it because I got so frustrated with the writing, and I just really wasn't enjoying it at all. So sadly, this was just not my jam at all, and I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. Next, I read a book I actually did enjoy, luckily, and it was The Shape of Water by Andrea Camilleri. This is translated from Italian by Stephen Sartorelli. It's a mystery novel, and it's set in Sicily in the 90s, and we follow Inspector Montalbano as he takes a closer look at the death of a guy who has been found in his car on the beach, but apparently he has died from natural causes, so no one's really thinking too much about it, but the inspector looks into it because something isn't quite right about all of it. I've never really heard anyone talk about this series. I just kind of discovered it in a bookshop and I picked it up, and I'm really happy that I did because I really enjoyed it. Now, I love a good cozy mystery. I think we're all aware of that, and this is a really good one. The setting in it is so good. Like, I really picture this town and the culture of it and all the people in it. And I really liked the characters as well. We meet people from all different walks of life, and getting to know the inspector was really cool because I just liked watching him try to figure this stuff out and just navigate all the people involved in this case. There's also something about the way this is written that I really like. And I read in a review that someone called it light, and I feel like that's an accurate description, but that doesn't mean that it's without depth or beauty or intelligence. It's sort of a elegant lightness in a way. Like, it's written without too many or too few words, if that makes sense. Like, it's a quick read, but I never felt like anything was missing. Now, the only reason I've given this 3 stars instead of 4 is that I actually kind of managed to solve the mystery halfway through, and I'm usually never able to do that. I was still interested in finding out if I was right, so I did enjoy like reading the rest of it. And I'm looking forward to reading more books in this series because I think I'm really going to like them. Then I read a book that I kind of fell a little bit in love with, and it is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is a historical fiction novel, and it's set in North Carolina in the 50s and 60s, and in it we meet this young girl who is basically just living all by herself out in the marsh, and tales of her wild life is the stuff of legend in the closest town. So when the dead body of a local appears in 1969, the people of the town immediately assume that the infamous marsh girl has something to do with it. This is probably the best book that I've read all year. Like, I really love this book. I just thought it was so good. It didn't take me far into this to feel really closely connected to the main character in this, and seeing her as a child and growing up into a young woman was equal parts painful and beautiful. Seeing her navigate the marsh alongside her own isolation and loneliness was just devastating but also amazing. And I really like the way that this author has captured this character, because in some ways she's really adult and she's incredibly intelligent, but in other ways she is really innocent and childlike, and she's all of those things all at once. The writing in this is excellent, and I love the way this author writes about the setting and the characters and just emotions. And I maybe especially loved the way that she described the landscape, because it's done so well that I almost felt like I was watching a movie in my head because it was just so vivid. The mystery part of this book was also intriguing, but for the most part it just kind of sits there in the background, and then towards the end is when we sort of take a closer look at it, and I felt like that worked really well. I don't really know what else to say about this to sort of convey how good I thought this book was. I just loved it, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, so I would obviously highly recommend it to everyone, which kind of means you just have to read it and you're probably gonna cry, so you're welcome. Second to last, I finished Death Knocks Twice by Robert Thorogood. This is a mystery novel, and it's the 3rd book in the Death in Paradise series, which is a series set on a fictional island in the Caribbean. And in this, we again meet Detective Inspector Richard Poole as he is wandering around this island in his woolen suit because he is an Englishman. And the mystery in this is about this vagrant who they find dead inside of a shower room, and the team of detectives obviously investigate. As we're on the 3rd book in this series now, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but overall I really enjoyed it. The mystery was intriguing, although the murder does take place inside of a locked room, and that was maybe a little bit too reminiscent of the murder in the 1st book. But overall, I thought it was interesting. I really liked the pool of suspects and trying to figure out who had done it and what was the story behind everything. The team of detectives in here were a delight to meet once again, especially the main character, because he is always just brilliant and silly, and I love him. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. It was very entertaining and enjoyable. Lastly, I finished Votes for Women by Jenny Murray. This is a nonfiction book, and it takes a look at the lives of 6 women who were vital to the suffragette movement in Britain. This was a short but enlightening little book, and I really enjoyed it. As with most of these like short types of books, it doesn't really go in depth, but it sort of quickly and succinctly introduces you to these women and the work that they did. And I really like that because I didn't know anything about any of this before I read this, so I feel like I learned a lot. I definitely want to read more about this topic, and although this sort of just graces the surface, I'm really glad that I read it, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I'd actually love to know if any of you have any recommendations for books about the suffragettes, because I want to read more and I don't really know where to go next. Now onto the book that I'm currently reading. I have just started Wilder Girls by Rory Power, which is kind of YA dystopia. It's about these girls who are stuck at their school because they're in quarantine, and they've been quarantined for quite some time now. And yeah, I'm intrigued to see what I'll make of this because I've heard very mixed reviews of it. Like, I've heard some weird stuff about the end, so we'll see how it goes. Okay guys, those are all the books that I had to talk about today. I'd love to know what you all have been reading lately, or if you've read any of the books that I mentioned, what you thought of them, and I will see you soon. Bye!